At the beginning of the 20th century, Europe looks a lot different from how it does when the Estonian War of Independence breaks out 18 years later. At the beginning of the 20th century, Europe belongs almost wholly to empires. Estonia has not yet made its appearance on the world map as a state. It has always been a fragment inside different empires. The land is owned by the Baltic nobility, estate owners who are always the actual rulers of the land, irrespective of who formally governs the territory. Estonia is not even one territory at the beginning of the 20th century. It is divided into two provinces, Estonia and Livonia, both belonging to the Russian Empire. For someone to call themselves an Estonian is something new. For centuries, people identified themselves as a peasantry, as a workforce in the fields. However, as serfdom is abolished, farms can be bought up. Industry is growing, and the new era boosts urbanization and contributes to the rise and convergence of an Estonian intelligentsia. The symbol of the Estonian self-consciousness is erected. The Estonia Theatre opened with a world-famous drama performance in 1913. As with Hamlet, where something is rotten in the state of Denmark, tensions are also bubbling in Europe. A year later, the theatre's facilities are being used for a military hospital. Then World War I begins. World War I, which is sparked by a single pistol shot in Sarajevo, pulls in numerous countries which, at the time, also did not yet exist on the map. They are yet to take form when the empires fall. World War I begets civil wars, and wars fought for national independence. Many fail, yet some prevail, and one of these is the cornerstone of a nation's state. "73 million soldiers fight on all theatres of World War I. 100,000 Estonian men fight and 10,000 die on the battlefields of Europe. The scale of the war is stupendous. On one side are the Central Powers, led by the German Empire. They are opposed by the Entente, centered around three giant powers, France, Great Britain, and the Russian Empire. The balance shifts when revolution breaks out in Russia in 1917. The Tsar is toppled. As a result, on March 3, 1918, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk is signed. Russia has left the war, but the Germans are almost at the gates of its capital, then known as Petrograd. And on their way there, they occupy Estonia. During one brief moment, when the German army is advancing across the Estonian mainland and the Russian army is retreating, the Republic of Estonia is declared on February the 24th, 1918. But the young republic must wait for revolution to dissolve the German Empire too, before it can begin to rule independently. On November the 9th, the German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, renounces his throne. By that time, Germany has already lost the war and signs an armistice on November the 11th in a train carriage at Compiègne, France. For the first time in history, Estonians can take the helm of their own state.
Eestlaste kasuks oli ju tegelikult päris palju tegureid, kas või alates sellest, et Esimene maailmasõda lõppes just nii, nagu ta lõppes. Ilma Saksamaa kaotuseta ilmselt ei oleks Eesti riiki vähemalt 18. aastal kindlasti mitte tekkinud. Kas kunagi tulevikus, kes seda teab? Teiselt poolt, et Venemaal oli tulnud võimule enamlased ja et nende võim oli just parajasti nii nõrk, nagu ta oli, et Venemaal oli selleks ajaks juba käivitunud kodusõda. Et võime ju kujutleda ka sellist situatsiooni, kus enamlased oleksid võimule tulnud, kus nad oleksid jõuga kõik oma vastased maha surunud või kui vähemasti Vene kodusõja puhkemine oleks edasi lükkunud. Ühesõnaga, kui Punaarmee oleks saanud täie jõuga rünnata lääne poole.
After revolution breaks out in Germany, Red Russia believes that world revolution is imminent. They want to take power, at least in Europe, but this would mean sending troops to those regions. And the newborn Baltic states are in the way of that conquest. On November the 18th, the commander-in-chief of the Soviet armed forces, Juhkams Vatsietis, gives the order to capture the Estonian towns of Pskov, Valga and Narva, as well as the capital, Tallinn. At around the same time, voluntary mobilization in Estonia brings together a mere 800 men, instead of the expected 10,000. Even though the Red Army initially directs only 2% of its forces against Estonia, the brand new Estonian army has principally no strength to resist. The 4-year-long World War has depleted all resources in Estonia. There is no food, money, fuel, or weapons. People are tired of war. Yet another one is about to break out, and this cannot be avoided. The Red Army's first attack on Narva is already launched on November the 22nd. This is opposed by German forces, still positioned on Estonian territory, but now in a hurry to leave. In Viru County, full mobilization is announced on November the 24th. On the morning of November the 28th, at 5:30 a.m., Red Army artillery starts shelling and the infantry goes on the move an hour later. Forces total 2,100 bayonets and swords, 32 machine guns, 10 field guns, and 2 armoured vehicles, plus another 1,000 men in reserve. A maritime landing is supported by 3 warships. The Estonian army has just a few hundred men with which to retaliate. The main force consists of 1,000 German troops who have not yet left the country. The first assault on Jaanilinn is repelled with machine gun and artillery fire. From the rear, across the Joala fields, a unit of the Viljandi Communist Rifle Regiment, belonging to the Estonian Red Guard, attacks. They had crossed the river with boats during the night. The Red Guards come under heavy German artillery fire from a 100-man unit, which has been hastily assembled from Estonians and Germans available, plus an armoured train. The Reds withdraw. They sustain substantial losses, and among the dead is Jan Sihver, chairman of the Council of the Estonian Red Rifle Regiment. Subsequent Soviet propaganda tried to show the War of Independence as a class war, where Estonian workers, who had escaped the German occupation, returned from Russia to free their homeland. To validate this narrative, Estonians must be a part of the initial invading force.
Eesti vabadussõda me ju ikkagi kodusõjaks ei pea, sellepärast et punaste poolel oli ilmselge vähemus eestlasi ja need ka kui sõja edasi minnes, siis nad ka minetasid igasuguse vaimustuse oma vendade vastu sõdides.
But the Battle of Narva is decided by the 650 Estonian, Finnish and Russian Red Sailors, who land at Narva-Jõesuu at 12:30 p.m. German forces who were defending the area initially mistake them for British warships. Afraid of becoming encircled, they retreat in a rush. At 3:30 p.m., the bridges of Narva are blown up. The Estonians are the last to leave. A workers' commune is declared in Narva, led by a Red Army commissar, Jan Anvelt. Ships from Kronstadt will be able to reach Tallinn harbour in less than 24 hours. The Red Navy is facing recruitment difficulties, but, however, there is another major force which is holding them back. On November the 27th, 1919, Britain's Royal Navy puts to sea to take control of the Baltic. The Royal Navy is known as the sovereign of the seas, but its fame does not protect it from sea minefields. World War I has turned the Gulf of Finland into the most mine-filled place on the planet. On December the 6th, 1919, a C-class light cruiser, HMS Cassandra, hits a drift mine. She sinks 42 kilometers east of the island of Saaremaa. The Royal Navy decides to turn back to its winter quarters in Copenhagen. This is a heavy blow for Estonia, as it leaves a large stretch of its maritime border open. Johan Laidoner is sent to bring the Brits back on board, The latter are impressed by the confident way that Estonian sea pilots promised to guide their ships through the minefields. Admiral Edwin Alexander Sinclair of the Royal Navy reports home that refusal would be a blow to the morale of both Estonians and the Royal Navy itself. Being dubbed the best naval force in the world, they simply cannot afford a coward's reputation. In December, the Red Army launches their assault on two mainland fronts. The front in the north is called the Viru Front, and in the south, the Southern Front. On both fronts, Estonian troops are often too far from each other to maintain the front's integrity. Sometimes units are more than 10 kilometers apart. There are simply too few men, about 3,500 altogether spread across both fronts. And these are poorly equipped and sometimes virtually barefoot.
Ega siis ilmaasjata see õppursõduri kuvand ei ole üks kõige tugevamaid pilte, mis ka püsis rahval meeles läbi kogu nõukogude aja. See oli päris asi, mis puudutas hingekeeli, nii et temast sai ka omamoodi müüt, aga mitte halvas mõttes. See õppursõdur ei olnud väljamõeldis. Et ta natukene ilustatud sai aja jooksul. See on teine asi.
Mobilization drafted men aged 21 to 24, but during the first month of the war, when the Estonian army was constantly retreating and the belief that their own state would endure was diminishing, the main support came from volunteering students. The youngest of these were 13 years old. During the war, 5,000 schoolboys joined a defense league, about 1,200 of whom went to the front. The rest served at the rear. More than 100 schoolboys gave their lives for Estonia.
Mine võtta midagi hamba alla.
Harold Triegel, a student at Tallinn Secondary School of Science, fell in action on the Järve estate in a surprise Red Army attack. He was 17 years old and was studying in the 5th grade.
Kõige imetlusväärsem Triegeli juures on see, et ta tegelikult suri teist inimest päästes.
See on justkui nagu selline väga ma ei oska seda sõnastada, uhke ja ainulaadne nähtus, ütleme nii. Mõtle, kui need nagu noored inimesed, kes on ju tegelikult rahva tulevik. Et need on just need, kes lähevad sõtta. Sest hiljem on ju need samad inimesed need, kes peavad selle riigi üles ehitama.
The course of the War of Independence is not determined by large-scale battles or endless gunfire. Particularly during the first months, it becomes clear that the leaders play an important role. They are patriots, school teachers or officers who came forward on their own initiative. Anton Ounapuu, schoolboys leader from the Secondary School of Science, perhaps the first intellectual who also became a certified teacher of physical education, is wounded, but returns to the front as soon as he recovers, only to fall in the spring of 1919.
Demonstreerime 1. mail, et Eesti töörahvas on tõusmas võitlusele, mis on juhitud kindlast tahtmisest purustada palgaorjuse kütked. Maha kapitalism, elagu kommunistlik internatsionaal, elagu kommunism.
Time decides the fate of these heroes. Subsequent Soviet propaganda turns Viktor Kingissepp, leader of the Estonian Bolshevik organization, into a martyr who is executed by the young Estonian state in 1922. The Bolshevik leader had got back to Estonia after the nationalists had come to power. All he could do is wait for the Red Army to approach in an effort to regain power. Yet another attempt is made on December 17th, 1918. The coup is suppressed by a handful of schoolboys who travel to Tallinn from Narva. After this demonstration, communist organizations are banned. General Ernst Johannes Põder is appointed as the chief of internal security. At the same time, the areas conquered by the Red Army suffer under mass executions. The Reds lose supporters, since in addition to acts of terror, the extent of which becomes clear only after the counterattack, they do not hand out land to farmers. Instead, they plan to create collective farms, communes. But the Estonians want land reform and farms they can call their own. By the end of December, the enemy holds half of mainland Estonia. Now, the government announces that land will be granted to those who fight in the Estonian army. The first battles are won at sea. After Christmas, the Brits capture 2 Red Navy destroyers, Avtroil and Spartak, and gift them to the Estonian Navy, where they are rechristened Lennuk and Vambula. These are the most powerful ships available in the whole War of Independence. From December until the end of the War of Independence, the Navy is led by Captain Johan Pitka. Captain Pitka was one of the founders of the Estonian Defence League, creator of armoured units, organiser of the arms industry, and was even poetically titled The Spirit of the War of Independence. This title indirectly implies his fate, as even during World War II he was among those few people who believed that Estonia could regain her independence. He led the resistance movement and organised the army. When faced with the threat of falling into the hands of the Soviet secret police, it is likely that he took his own life, but where and how is still a mystery, as is his seeming ability to work round the clock during the War of Independence. When the German troops hurriedly leave Tallinn at the end of November, Estonians start to gather the goodies they left behind. At Kopli freight station, a couple of railroad cars equipped with machine guns are found. These are missing parts of their roofs, but the protective sand-filled double walls are still intact. They report this find to the chief of the Defence League, who in return informs Captain Karl Parts, who later becomes the commander of armoured trains. Parts quickly arranges the rail cars into a sequence, with the unarmoured engine placed in the middle of the train. The artillery car goes to the front, making it possible to fire at objects 8 kilometres away. Next come the machine gun and infantry cars, which flank and protect the engine. Armoured trains are continuously improved throughout the war. Sections are added, which can stand in the nearest station during battles, and where it's possible to cook, live, and even wash. But paramount is the simple yet genius solution that the armoured trains offer. Soldiers who are rested, fed, and dry can be transported directly to the battlefield.
Eesti rahvaväes oli soomusronge lihtsalt väga palju. Neid oli kokku 6 laiarööpmelist, 5 kitsarööpmelist. Iga soomusrong oli omaette väeosa. Ja ta allus selle diviisi ülemale, kelle rindelõigus nad parajasti tegutsesid. Ja alles augustis 1919 moodustati soomusrongide diviis. See oli puhtalt juba lahingkoondis.
As metal is in short supply, men are protected by sandbag armour. The space between 2 walls is filled with sand, which, as it dries, tends to leak out.
Meil on siin tükike soomusrongi ja eestlastel teadagi ei ole rauda, ei ole kulda, aga on kodumaine materjal. Siin on puit ja siis liiv. Kas need tõesti ajavad asja ära?
Seinaehitus oligi laud 32 mm, post, mis siis seinakonstruktsiooni hoiab, vahel siis liivatäide ja jälle 32 mm laud.
Armoured trains become a significant source of firepower, which helps to slow down the enemy advance at the end of 1918. And when the Red Army is only 45 kilometres away from Tallinn, help from yet another source presents itself. The first 150 Finnish volunteers reach Estonia. Their arrival on the last day of 1918 boosts the morale of the Estonian soldiers.
teada on ja tuntud on meil nõukogude ajast legendid, et Soome lihunikud ja kõrilõikajad. Et eks nad olid ka suhteliselt julmad vennad küll vaenlasega. Vange ei võetud, kui vähegi võimalik ja see tähendas seda, et Punaarmee kartis neid üksusi. Nad olid hästi relvastatud ja siiski moraalselt väga kõrgel tasemel.
By the beginning of the counterattack on January the 6th, 1919, the balance of forces at the front is almost at parity. The ranks of the Estonian army are boosted by the Finns. On the other hand, the Red Army's advantage lies in their reserves. They are able to deploy 1,500 additional men to the front. The War of Independence is not a war that stretched over a vast area of terrain. The Red Army targeted road and rail junctions. One such important intersection lies at the town of Põltsamaa in central Estonia. On January the 4th, 1919, 200 Estonians faced 400 to 500 Red Army men at Aidu, only 4 kilometers away. In a war that so far lasted a little over a month, this is one of those actions that comes to be called a breakthrough battle. The Estonians did not retreat any further. The weather is cold, minus 10 to 15 degrees Celsius has prevailed for some time, and the watery meadows and soggy swamps have become more passable. Defenders find cover behind small hills, protecting them from the onslaught coming over the open fields. From here on, the Estonian army begins to apply the most significant advantage it has, knowledge of the surrounding terrain. This is an important leverage for smaller forces. The enemy is allowed to come as close as possible, and defenders start shooting only when the assailant is already less than 400 meters away. The Estonian army is also successful because the Red Army is unable to direct its artillery fire from afar, and the Red Infantry pulls back to Kose parish around dusk. The Estonians make a surprise counterattack. The Reds, who are having supper, flee in panic. The breakthrough battles stem from the success on the Viru front. On January the 7th, Commander-in-Chief Johan Laidna orders the general assault. The advance is fairly successful, especially on the Viru front, where armoured trains are used. But the retreating Red Army is all the more in a hurry to execute prisoners they have taken from conquered areas en masse. The armoured trains pause at the Tapa junction to wait until the bridges on the road to Rakvere are restored. Karl Parts, the commander of armoured trains, is suddenly notified that his family has been executed in Tartu. Without asking for permission, he sends 2 trains to the southern front. On the southern front, the enemy's biggest fear is of a partisan group led by Julius Kuperjanov. It skillfully infiltrates the enemy's rear, blasts bridges, and carries off commissars of the hated Red Power. The group's morale is high. Their leader is a 24-year-old lieutenant, Julius Kuperjanov. A former schoolteacher who fought in World War I, Kuperjanov organized the Underground Defense League during the German occupation. For many reasons, he becomes the symbol of the War of Independence, a young leader who prefers improvisation to rigid chains of command, who acts sometimes recklessly and falls as a hero. And during the later Soviet occupation era, it becomes an act of silent resistance to bring candles to Kuperjanov's grave. Kuperjanov's troops join the Tartu-bound armoured trains. The Reds are planning to increase their forces, but these reinforcements are delayed, and the attack comes as a surprise. From the Jäänse railway bridge, which makes up a bottleneck on the railway routes of southern Estonia, but is miraculously still intact, the troops are essentially running towards Tartu, and the town is retaken with astounding speed on January the 14th. And they have reason to hurry. The lives of 350 people incarcerated in Tartu prisons are at stake. In the cellar at Tartu Bank of Credit, the bodies of 19 people who had been shot dead are found. Among them is the Estonian Orthodox Bishop Platon, who was canonized over 80 years later in 2000. On January the 17th, a naval landing takes place on Utria beach near Narva. 600 Finns and 400 Estonians land in difficult weather conditions. The waves capsize their boats, and men have to swim ashore in the winter temperatures. Under the darkness of the night, local schoolboys from Narva find safer landing places. There are about 4,000 Red Army soldiers in the area. On the night of January the 18th, the Estonian army attacks. Some Red units surrender without a fight. Some flee towards Narva, with the Estonian cavalry regiment too late to capture them. It is pitch dark. To recognize friend from foe, Estonians attach spruce branches to their hats, but these tend to get lost in the melee. The successful landing at Utria opens up a route to Narva. The Finns do not want to fight beyond the borders to where the Viru front extends, after the Estonian troops have conquered Narva. Thus, the Sons of the North, the regiment of Finnish volunteers, is relocated to the southern front. After Tartu, the next important target is to capture the southern town of Valga. In addition to the railway junction, Valga boasts well-stocked warehouses. The Red Army is now fighting to win time to carry off as many supplies as possible. A bloody prelude to the liberation of Valga is the Battle of Paju on January the 30th, the most dramatic and most costly battle during the War of Independence. Estonian-Finnish joint forces plan to capture the manor house and then attack the enemy from the flanks. The Red Army has placed itself at the naturally fortified positions surrounding the house. The plan is risky because the communication between troops is poor and the estate is surrounded by open fields.
Nüüd oleme päris lahinguväljal, kus siis erinevad osapooled asusid.
Kolmanda roodu ahelik tuli sealt mööda mäenõlva mööda üles ja jõudis siia nüüd kõrgemale ja jäi siis kuulipilja tule alla.
Punaste soomusrong tulistas aktiivselt kuulipildujatest kogu aeg siia, vahepeal on arhiivis materjal, et põld lausa särises kuulidest ja loomulikult punased tulistasid ka kahuritest, šrapnelle ja siin on üks originaal killukene, sellest võib aimata, missugust viga see teeb, kui see kuulikiirusega pärast mürsu plahvatamist lendab inimese suunas.
Ja siis Kuperjanov tuli neid ergutama. Ta liikus püsti jalu, aga siis mingil hetkel kükitas põlve peale ja vaatas mõisa poole. Oli niimoodi kummargil veidi ja siis sel hetkel kuu lavastada läbi õlavarre ja siis läks rindu.
The wounded Julius Kuperjanov waits in the Sangasta railway station for hours and reaches Tartu on the next day. However, blood loss and infection prove fatal, and Kuperjanov dies on February the 2nd, exactly 1 year before the War of Independence ends. But as of the moment of his death, almost all of the territory of Estonia has been liberated. But until the peace treaty is signed, the war must continue to be fought on foreign soil.
ei leia.